Well, it's about that time. So, this is like a long overdue review here. GearBest was good to me, like so many other folks that basically have made any video out there for 3D printing, and they blessed me with one of these Creality. This is the CR-10, and I think it's the 3-1. It's really pretty nice. I've been really kind of amazed at how well it prints for the price. The default print, when I first set it up, I did the file that was loaded on the card that came with it, that little mini SD card, and we had this kind of failed print. It looks like it just kind of slipped. I moved right on to trying another print right after that, without touching anything, just to see if that was a fluke. And it actually did really well. I didn't tighten anything up then, but then moved on. Since then, I've kind of loaded a couple different filaments. The Money Cat one was actually done with the filament that came with it. But since then, I've actually done a couple little things of tightening up the belts and just trying to make sure everything was real tight. For the most part, if you're going to try to do a kit one and you feel comfortable just starting with that, then this is a really good one to start with. There's a couple of great videos out there on how to maybe level it. You can see I have the tape here that's actually underneath the glass. I put the tape down first and then decided I'd rather get a smoother finish. So what I am doing now is I'm actually printing right on top of the glass here, and I just flipped this glass plate over. So it's kind of a nice way. If I'm printing with another filament, I have a couple other filaments I want to try to experiment with, and I'll use the tape for that, like the nylon filament I have, and maybe one of my other ABS. But on the glass, I'm just using some of this, Elmer's Extreme. I'd usually put just a little bit on, just as it's getting ready to heat up the extruder, and then I don't have any problems. So this is actually this is the small gap model of that geared heart I did, and I really haven't done anything to this except gently pry it off of the build plate, and it came off beautifully, really nicely spinning, with some nice brand new fresh kind of fluorescent pink filament, PLA. I did a couple other test prints. I did a couple of the benchies, and the benchies actually did a remarkably good job with their prints. A little bit of banding and echo in a couple spots, but this was at a 0.2 resolution. I wasn't trying to get too crazy with it off the bat. We also kind of made a version of this, and I'm using Cura and just the standard profile. I haven't really messed with it too much. A couple quick things that I would probably change on this. One, over here, you'll notice that this filament starts to touch up against this vertical rod, the Z-axis rod, and so you can kind of position the printer so that doesn't happen. But it's there, and there's a few pieces out there where people have designed on Thingiverse. Maybe I'll put links in the description. They make it so you can move this over a little bit and kind of give you a better sense. A couple other things is that when you do this, you want to really make sure you're kind of square. And I noticed that the switch down here on this side, then when it comes down to zero out, you might have to adjust this, and it's actually pretty logical if you've seen it before, or have tried to build any ones before. This is probably the easiest kit version I've ever seen, and it makes it pretty straightforward on how to get it all working. Because most of this this upright comes all together. You just need to try to make it square. So I think the things I'm going to add to this is I'm going to add an additional support over here on the side to give it a better square. I would really have loved to see a second Z-axis stepper motor on this side to help it out. But for the most part, I think this has worked out really well. The only really weird thing is this Z-axis actually keeps coming loose. The screws that are all the way down here at the bottom probably need to be remounted again, and it's not such a big deal because when it goes, it's pushing it up, so it's not the biggest deal, but it makes it so you'll get a little bit of rattle and play in there, which is you start hearing something banging from the other room and you're like, oh, what's going on, gotta check it. But otherwise, I'd say for the price and it's really, and the build volume, and for an open printer, I think it's really a great deal. I've kind of been grumbling being like, no, 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 because I'm a big fan of some of the MakerBots and the Ultimakers and things like that. But you could buy a whole lot of these for the price of one of those. So I think it's definitely worth a shot if you're willing to tinker just a little bit and maybe do a few upgrades. So leave comments and in the description. I'll also add a link or two to those, and because it is a GearBest one, they will be affiliate links. So sorry, but you know, that's how the game goes. Anything else I would actually add to it is I'd probably like to see some better software and maybe a better way to kind of, because the little SD card that works over here on the side, you have to flip it upside down, and then you know the menu system in here is kind of, you know, one of those standard real low level ones. But overall it's a pretty good one, and I guess I have to recommend it begrudgingly.